Hi, I'm on. I used to think family meant home, safety, and love. But on my 30th birthday, my parents handed me a packed suitcase and told me to leave. No thank you. No goodbye. Just cold words. You're too old to freeload. I'd paid their bills, cleared their debts, kept the lights on, and somehow, I was still disposable. The worst part wasn't getting kicked out, it was realizing I'd been used for years. And I never saw it coming. When I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy me. Before we start, what time is it where you are? And where are you listening from? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your story too. Some storms you don't survive. You outgrow them. Close your eyes and picture this. The narrow cobblestone streets of Istanbul, glowing under the last golden light of the day. The air is warm with the smell of fresh cement bread from a street vendor, and somewhere far away, the evening call to prayer floats through the air like a soft echo. Copper coffee pots bubble in small cafes, sending the rich scent of Turkish coffee drifting into the streets. And there I am, walking past the faded blue doors of old stone houses, holding a small cake box in one hand. My own footsteps echo between the walls, mixing with the sound of seagulls crying over the Bosphorus. I turn into a quiet alley, heading toward a home that by the end of the night will no longer be mine. I pulled into the cracked driveway, the sun already dipping below the horizon, casting the small town of Ridgeway, Ohio, in a heavy blue. Dusk. I pulled into the cracked driveway, the sun already dipping below the horizon, casting the neighborhood in that deep blue shade between day and night. But instead of maple trees, the narrow street outside was lined with tall plane trees, their leaves turning gold and drifting down over the stone path. The air carried that early bite of autumn, mixed with the faint scent of roasted chestnuts from a cart at the corner. I reached across the passenger seat for the small cake box, the only thing I'd bothered to get for myself today. 20 lira. Vanilla frosting. Happy birthday written crookedly in red icing. Because I hadn't wanted to correct the tired teenager behind the counter. As I stepped inside, the house felt off. Not that I expected a surprise party, or even a half-hearted. Cullen and Vera had long since abandoned the idea of celebrating me. But still, tonight's silence had weight. Thick, unmoving. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, casting its pale, unforgiving glow. Dinner was already set on the low wooden table, lamb kafta, a bowl of pickled vegetables, and pulav. I hadn't even taken my coat off before Cullen barked from his seat at the head of the table. You're late. I set the cake down quietly on the marble counter, the plastic bag crinkling louder than I meant. Worked late. Had to finish up some reports. I replied, my voice flat, steady. No apology. Vera didn't say a word, just fussed with her fork, never looking up. Cullen poured himself another inch of Rocky into a glass, the sharp innocent drifting across the table. We began to eat. The clink of cutlery, the scrape of plates, the occasional cough. No happy birthday, no acknowledgement, just the mechanical rhythm of chewing and swallowing. Halfway through, Cullen slammed his fork down hard enough that Vera flinched. He leaned back, eyes fixed on me like I was something unworthy. You're too old to be freeloading. It's time you left. For a second, the words felt unreal. I blinked at him, then at Vera, searching for some contradiction, some kindness. But she kept her eyes down, lips pressed tight. I pay the internet, the electricity, half the rent, groceries, I said evenly. Cullen laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut through the air. Paying a few bills doesn't buy you a lifetime stay, princess. The name he once used when I was small, sitting on his lap, eating lokum dusted with sugar. Now it was a weapon. It hit me then. This wasn't sudden. It was planned. My birthday wasn't a celebration, it was an eviction notice. I pushed my plate away, the scent of the food now heavy and sour in my stomach. I stood up slowly. They expected tears, maybe begging. Instead, I just nodded. Got it. Cullen smirked like he'd won something. Vera still stared at her plate. I walked to the counter, picked up the cake, and went upstairs. One candle was missing from the box. Maybe it fell out on the way, but it felt symbolic. My bags were already half-packed. Part of me had known this was coming, not tonight. Not. So cruel, but soon. I folded my jacket neatly over the suitcase. My hands were steady. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I was done. As I moved around the room, my mind clicked through the next steps: cancel autopay, transfer my paychecks, find a storage unit. They hadn't just told me to leave tonight. They erased everything I'd given them without asking for anything in return. Outside the window, the wind picked up, carrying the distant sound of a ferry horn from the Bosphorus. This house was never mine. Maybe it never had been. Another reminder that winter was coming fast, and I wouldn't be here when it hit. As I zipped up my suitcase, my eyes caught the old mirror in the corner. Its wooden frame carved in delicate Ottoman patterns, chipped from years of use. Same brown hair pulled into a loose bun. Same tired green eyes. But something was different. A line had been crossed. A line I couldn't uncross even if I wanted to. I walked back to the bed, the soft kilim rug under my feet, muffling each step. The small cake sat on my nightstand now, absurdly tiny against the heavy brass lamp. I hadn't even thought to buy candles. Not that anyone would have been here to sing. The sickly sweet smell of cheap frosting hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of rosewater drifting in from the open window. Without thinking, I pushed the cake off the table. It fell with a soft thud, the cardboard box crumpling against the worn rug woven in faded reds and golds. Happy birthday. On the silence pressed against me like a second skin. My suitcase lay half-packed, its old leather straps gaping open as if mocking my indecision. Outside, the wind slipped through the narrow alleys, rattling the wooden shutters that no one had bothered to fix. The whole house seemed to sigh, the way old stone houses in Istanbul do when the night air settles in. I looked at the ruined cake on the rug, smashed frosting like a childish hope smeared across something that would never be clean again. My eyes shifted to the dull gray suitcase, its handle worn smooth from years of carrying not just clothes, but the weight of their failures. Memories came rushing in like the winter tide. On the Bosphorus, the time Cullen cracked a tooth during one of his drunken nights, and I dipped into my savings meant for my own apartment to pay his dentist in cash. No thanks. No acknowledgement. Just a grunt. Or when Vera's bald tires skidded off the icy road outside Skdar, and I skipped work, bought her a new set, and paid for the tow. She smiled faintly, called me a good girl, then handed me the repair bill. When the roof leaked last spring, it was me on the ladder in the pouring rain, hammering in new tiles while Cullen sat inside with a beer, complaining about how you couldn't trust contractors anymore. And yet, none of it mattered. None of it earned me a seat at their table tonight. I pressed my palms into my eyes until bursts of light danced behind my lids. The sadness was still there, but colder now, hardening into something unbreakable. The floorboards creaked under my steps as I moved downstairs, the scent of strong Turkish tea still lingering in the air from earlier in the evening. In the living room, the blue glow of the television lit my parents like ghosts in a painting. Cullen lounged back with his beer. Vera sat stiffly, her eyes glassy and distant. They looked as though nothing had happened, as if tonight was just another Wednesday. I stood there, waiting, maybe still hoping. But hope is a dangerous thing, and tonight, it was dead. Cullen noticed me first, raising his beard lazily. "Don't forget to turn off the lights when you leave," he slurred. "You're not paying for them anymore." The words hit harder than any slap. They weren't just kicking me out. They were erasing every sacrifice. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I simply turned and climbed the stairs slower with each step, as if carrying all the years I'd given away for nothing. In my room, I closed the door softly, pressing my palm against the wood like sealing away the part of me that had once believed blood meant loyalty. For a moment, I just breathed in the scent of the old rug, the faint trace of my grandmother's lavender soap still lingering in the fibers. Then, with steady hands, I pulled my laptop from under the bed. If they thought they could toss me aside and keep living off my work, they were about to learn otherwise. The screen's pale light spilled across the room. Years of paying bills had made the motions second nature. One by one, I closed the accounts: electric, water, gas, all in my name. Each click felt like cutting a silk cord that had bound me to this place. Finally, I transferred the last of my money from the joint account into the private one I'd set up months ago. Back, when a voice inside me whispered that this day would come. "Hi, I'm the cable and internet accounts came next, luxuries they used daily." Without a second thought, never realizing it was my name at the top of every bill. My paychecks had kept their endless scrolling alive, their cheap sitcom marathons, running into the small hours. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Each click was a quiet reclaiming of power they thought I'd never dare touch. I hesitated over the auto insurance. Cullen's truck, Vera's battered Camry, both tucked safely under my plan, saving them a few hundred lira each month. I could almost hear Vera's syrupy voice from last year, warm with false sweetness. "You're so good with money, honey. It just makes sense." Sure it did. For them. I removed each vehicle from the policy. My heartbeat steady, not with fear, but with a cold satisfaction. When the final account was severed, I closed the laptop with a soft snap. The silence in my room shifted, lighter now, but sharp, like air after the rain. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was balance. They wanted me gone. Fine. But they would finally understand what it meant to lose the daughter, who had held their fragile world together with invisible thread. Downstairs, the TV still blared. A canned laugh track climbed the staircase, like an unwelcome guest. I wondered how long it would take, until the lights flickered out, until the heater gave its final cough, until the cold crept in through the cracked windows. I wouldn't be here to see it. Tomorrow, I'd be gone. But tonight, I began pulling the first bricks from the foundation they had built carelessly on my back. The glow of the laptop dimmed as I leaned back, fingers poised above the keyboard. Midnight was close. The house had settled into a deceptive stillness outside my window. The wind moved through the oak trees with a low, restless whisper. The air smelled faintly of dried leaves and the sharp promise of winter. I sat in the quiet, feeling the weight seep into my bones, not just the fatigue of the day, but years of carrying responsibilities that had never been acknowledged. But exhaustion was a luxury I couldn't afford. Cracking my knuckles, I focused. First, the electricity bill. My name had been on it ever since that winter when Dad forgot to pay, and we spent 2 days shivering without heat. My password slid easily into the login screen. Remove payment method. Confirm. Submit. Next, the water bill. Same story. Autopay canceled. Debit details erased. A grim satisfaction settling over me like a heavy wool shawl. Netflix gone. I almost laughed at the profile names. Dad, Mom, even one labeled family movie night. A joke. considering we hadn't shared one in nearly a decade. Internet service, gone. Cell phone plan add-ons, gone. My personal Amazon Prime account, disconnected from this address like cutting the final, frayed cord. Each click wasn't vengeance. It was survival. An hour later, I set the laptop aside and pulled out a yellow legal pad from my nightstand. I listed every service I had cut. Every vein in this house I had severed. I needed to see it in ink, the true measure of what they had taken for granted. As I scribbled the last item, memories came uninvited. Nights, working overtime to cover surprise heating bills. Vacations canceled so Vera could replace her alternator. Birthdays skipped because there was always something more important they needed from me. I gripped the pen tighter. This wasn't punishment. It was refusal. Opening my bank app, I found the emergency savings account I'd created years ago, back when I thought family meant shared safety. My name was listed first, but I'd made it accessible to them because family. I tapped freeze account. No withdrawals, no transfers. It would take them weeks of paperwork to undo it. By then, I'd be far away. The confirmation screen glowed. The knot in my chest loosened. I had given them everything. Tonight, I chose myself. An email notification pinged. Tyler, my cousin. A meme of a cartoon dog in a burning room. This is fine. No words. Just that, I almost replied. But Tyler didn't. Belong to this rod. Some bridges needed to burn without witnesses. Instead, I opened a blank email draft. You asked me to leave. Now, so has my support. My finger hovered over send. Then I closed the tab. They didn't deserve words. They deserved the same silence they had gifted me tonight. The clock ticked to 1:57 a.m. The house exhaled in creaks and groans. Somewhere downstairs, a bottle clinked in the sink. I imagined Vera swirling her wine, watching reruns, oblivious. The heater hummed. Its last warm night for a long while. I double-checked every cancellation. Scheduled for sunrise. Neat, irreversible. By tomorrow. When Cullen flipped a light switch or tried to microwave his coffee, nothing would happen. When Vera's card was declined at the market. When the internet froze mid-scene, they would know. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I simply felt empty. But it was the kind of emptiness that promised something better could take its place. At 2 a.m. I closed the laptop and stared at the shadows dancing on the ceiling. My bag was ready. My car, parked 2 streets over to avoid questions, was already packed. Tomorrow, I would leave this house, this town, this hollow shell of obligation and resentment. Tomorrow, they would wake up to a life without the daughter they never thought about. Losing. The morning light barely came through the cheap blinds in Nora's apartment when my phone started buzzing hard on the nightstand. Half asleep, I pulled the blanket tighter around me, hoping it was just a wrong number. But one look at the screen killed that hope. 12 missed calls. Vera, Cullen. A few numbers I didn't know. Probably neighbors or distant relatives. I didn't listen to the voicemails right away. I just stared at the list, feeling a tight knot grow in my chest. A bit of guilt tried to rise, but I pushed it down. They had made their choice. I rolled onto my back and opened Tyler's text first. It was short, straight to the point, just like him. Internet's down. No lights. Dad's mad. Mom's crying. I dropped the phone on the bed beside me and stared at the cracked ceiling. It had begun. And this time, I wasn't there to fix it. A new notification. A voicemail. Curiosity one. And I played it on speaker while I pulled on a sweater. Vera's voice was soft and shaking. Honey, there must be some mistake. You wouldn't just leave us. Please call me. We can fix this. We're family. I closed my eyes. Funny how quickly freeloader turned into family once the Wi-Fi stopped working. Another ding. A text from Cullen. You'll regret turning your back on your family. No warmth. No confusion. Only anger. I silenced the phone and set it face down. Nora came in with 2 mugs of coffee, wearing an oversized hoodie, her hair messy from sleep. She handed me one and sat on the floor next to the bed. After a sip, she said, "You look like someone told you your winning lottery ticket expired." I let out a humorless laugh. "They're panicking," I said. Nora leaned her head back against the wall. "Good," she said calmly. "Sometimes saving yourself isn't betrayal. It's survival." We sat there in silence, listening to the sound of a garbage truck outside. Later, we went to a small autumn festival at the local church. Pies, pumpkins, handmade candles. I kept to the edges, minding my own business. But soon, I heard whispers. Cullen was there, standing by the apple bobbing booth. His voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "My daughter abandoned us. After everything we sacrificed for her. Kids. These days, no loyalty, no gratitude." Some people nodded, but others exchanged doubtful looks. This wasn't the first time Cullen shared family drama in public, and people remembered. Nora touched my arm gently. "Don't," she whispered. I hadn't realized I was walking toward him. I stopped, breathed, let him rant. I didn't owe them an audience. As I walked away, I caught parts of other conversations. Didn't her daughter pay their bills for years? Wasn't she the one who helped when the mom got sick? Slowly, the town was starting to see through them. That night, back at Nora's, I got more updates from friends. Photos of my parents' house, porch light out, newspapers piling up. A note that Cullen yelled at the electric company in front of neighbors. They weren't ashamed of how they treated me, only that people could finally see it. As the sun set, I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet streets. Somewhere nearby, the house that had drained all my love and patience was going dark. And for once, I didn't run to save it. Days passed. I buried myself in small tasks, organizing papers, cleaning, updating my resume. But my mind kept circling back to them. Then, another text from Vera. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Dad's health is failing. He hasn't eaten in 2 days." The guilt hit fast, sharp. Memories came, birthdays, laughter. Late night talks, moments that didn't match recent years, but still hurt to remember. Relatives started calling. "Your father's heart isn't strong. Think about your mother. She's fragile." Each message chipped away at my resolve. Then, a text from Tyler. "Dad told Mom to fake chest pains next if guilt tripping doesn't work." And just like that, I knew the truth. They didn't miss me, they missed what I could do for them. I dropped the phone, curled into myself on the couch, and let the weight of everything finally press down. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was something colder, sharper. I didn't move until Nora came home from her shift at the clinic, her sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. "You okay?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door. I nodded slowly. For the first time in years, I finally was. When she went into the kitchen, I picked up my phone. I scrolled through my contacts. Cullen, Vera, and Marcy, Uncle Phil. Every cousin and distant relative who had called to scold me, but never once asked how I was. One by one, I deleted them. No rush, no tears, just erasing. Then I blocked every number tied to that house, that life, that fake sense of belonging. It wasn't out of anger. It was mercy for myself. I set the phone face down and breathed deeply. I knew cutting them off wouldn't end the war. But tonight, I had won a small battle. I thought life would feel lighter, like shrugging off a heavy coat. Instead, there was an eerie quiet, as if the world was holding its breath. The first days passed calmly. I helped Nora reorganize her apartment, applied for jobs in nearby towns, cooked dinner, small steps toward normal life. I thought maybe I'd escape the damage they tried to leave in me. Then it started. One Thursday morning, with fall chill creeping through the windows, I was drinking weak coffee from one of Nora's chipped mugs when my phone buzzed. I thought it was another job rejection. Instead, it was a message from Carrie, an old coworker. "Hey, you seen what your dad posted?" I tapped the link. There it was in the local town's Facebook group. Cullen's words burned on my screen. "Some daughters are raised to be grateful. Some turn into snakes after everything we sacrificed. Our daughter left us sick, starving, abandoned. Pray for us." Over 100 comments. Some offered prayers. Others threw insults. "Ungrateful brat. Parents give you life and you spit on them." My hands shook. Nora looked up from the kitchen. "Bad?" I nodded, pressing the phone to my chest. By noon, screenshots poured in from friends who cared enough to warn me. Neighbors, cousins, even old teachers were piling on. Nora sat across from me, calm but fierce. "They're writing your story for you. Are you going to let them?" Her words sank deep. "No, not this time." I turned off my phone and opened the drawer with the folder. My truth. Years of receipts, screenshots, emails, bank statements. Proof of thousands of dollars I had poured into that house and those people, without asking for thanks. Electric bills in my name. Mortgage payments from my account. Repairs paid for with my overtime. They had forgotten the cost because they had never paid it. I spent hours scanning documents, organizing files. Every receipt was a memory, and every memory cut away any pity I had left. By evening, I had a fortress of evidence. Nora peeked in. "You going to post it?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Let them talk a little more. Let them show everyone who they really are." I was patient now, strategic. Small towns thrived on gossip, but they crumbled fast when the truth came out. I just had to wait for the right moment. That night, over leftover spaghetti, Nora lifted her fork in a toast to survival. I lifted mine to never apologizing for saving yourself. Later, in bed, I replayed Cullen's words. "Some daughters are raised to be grateful." I had been grateful even when they starved me emotionally, drained me financially, erased me as a person. But not anymore. By morning, the decision was made. No turning back. I sat at Nora's dining table, laptop open, heart pounding but hands steady. Carefully, I uploaded the thread. No anger, no emotion, just facts. First, screenshots of utility bills in my name. Then, bank statements showing mortgage payments from my account. Emails with the landlord proving I paid for repairs that kept the house standing. Finally, a short timeline. Years of vacations skipped, birthdays missed, self-care ignored to keep them afloat. I ended with one sentence. When they asked me to leave, they didn't just lose a daughter. They lost the person who kept the lights on when they weren't looking. I hit post. For a moment, silence. Just the hum of the fridge. Then, my phone began to buzz. It started slowly. A few likes, a few shocked comments, and some private messages from old school friends saying, "I always wondered why you stayed so long." Then things exploded like a dam breaking. Dozens of shares, hundreds of comments, neighbors, former teachers, and even people I barely remembered started speaking up. One neighbor wrote, "I remember seeing her shoveling their driveway alone when she was 16 while her parents yelled from the porch." Another said, "Cullen always bragged about never paying a cent for bills once on got her job." The stories poured out like wounds that had been hidden for years. People had seen more than I thought. They just never spoke up until now. Cullen. And Vera panicked. First, Cullen tried to fight back. He posted a bitter status. We all have misunderstandings in families. My daughter exaggerates for sympathy. Sad, really? It backfired immediately. People replied, funny how you never posted about her paying your bills until now. And you don't look to sit cashing her checks. Then Vera tried pity. She left voicemail after voicemail. Please, your father isn't well. I didn't know he was going to post that. This is all a misunderstanding. Please take it down before people think badly of us. That voice used to break me, not anymore. I knew it wasn't regret, it was fear of losing their reputation. That afternoon, Nora and I went to the fall festival in town. The air smelled like caramel apples and hay. Kids screamed with joy on the bounce houses. A brass band tuned up near the courthouse. I felt eyes on me the moment I arrived, but it wasn't hate anymore. It was something softer, almost sad. Mrs. Langford, my old teacher, gave me a small smile. Mr. Collins from the hardware store tipped his hat. Near the pumpkin carving table, one of Vera's old church friends touched my shoulder and said softly, "You deserved better, sweetheart." We all knew. We were just too afraid to say it. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. I realized then the shame was never mine. It was theirs. That evening, as fairy lights lit the square and fireworks burst over the courthouse, I felt it in my bones. Sometimes the brightest moments come after the darkest storms. I wasn't running anymore, I was rising. 2 days later, I stood at Nora's window, watching the small town settle into a cool autumn night. I thought maybe it was over. Then came the knock. It was polite, almost shy. I opened the door to find a police officer holding a large envelope. "Miss On Marin?" he asked. "Yes. You've been served. Civil suit. Contacts are inside." I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. But I did. Cullen was suing me for theft, emotional abuse, and financial abandonment. It was petty cruelty dressed in legal words. Nora read over my shoulder. "Unbelievable. There. Trying to destroy you because you walked away." For a second, old guilt tried to return. That voice in my head whispered, "Maybe you should have stayed quiet." But that voice had no power now. I stood tall. "Not this time. I'm done apologizing for saving myself." By noon, I was on the phone with a legal aid office in Columbus. I explained everything. Send them all my proof, every bill, every receipt, every record of the help I'd given. They listened and said, "You have a strong case. Honestly, it sounds like you could sue them for exploitation." I didn't want revenge. I wanted my life back. That afternoon, I followed their advice and filed my own official complaints. This time, I described years of financial control mixed with emotional pressure. Elder abuse, I learned, can go both ways when grown children are forced to work and give money under guilt and threats. The reaction was fast. Vera called first, her voice shaking with fake sadness. Please, you're tearing this family apart. We only wanted what's best for you. You're overreacting. You know your father isn't well." I stayed silent. An hour later, Cullen texted me a last poison dart. "You think you won? Family always gets the last word." I stared at it for a long time, the words blurring as anger and pity fought inside me. Then I opened the small drawer beside my bed. In the corner, wrapped in tissue, was the tiny plastic cake topper I'd bought for myself on my last birthday, the birthday they turned into an eviction party. One candle, one broken memory. I turned it over in my hand, thinking how much hope I had once placed in such a small thing. "Family isn't who you're born to," I whispered into the quiet room. It's who treats you like you matter. 2 days later, I stood outside the police station with legal papers in my hand, next to a volunteer from the EAT office. The building looked plain, nothing scary, but the meaning of what was inside felt heavy. Inside, Cullen sat stiff at a worn wooden table. Vera was beside him, twisting her handbag strap. They looked smaller than I remembered, angrier, weaker. An officer explained calmly that if they kept pushing the false charges, they could be countersued for defamation and financial abuse. And I had the proof. Cullen's face turned red. He shoved his chair back so hard it hit the floor. "This is a witch hunt," he snapped at the officer. "She's manipulating everyone." No one answered him. Vera dropped into her seat, crying so loudly. The sound bounced off the walls. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. When they stormed out, the officer turned to me and said quietly, "You did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Outside, the sun was bright against the cool autumn sky. I stood for a moment, letting the light soak into my skin. The courthouse stood behind me. The town stretched ahead. The air smelled crisp, like endings and beginnings mixed together. With each step away from that building, the weight I had carried for years felt lighter. No more explaining. No more guilt. No more saying sorry as I crossed the parking lot. A gust of wind sent leaves spinning around my boots. It felt like the world itself was sweeping away the last pieces of my old life. The courthouse grew smaller. In my rearview mirror as I drove away, windows down, cool air washing over me like a cleansing. For the first time in years, my heart didn't feel heavy. No guilt-filled voicemails. No demanding texts. No trying to hold together a family that never really included me. I was free, but freedom, I learned, is quieter than I expected. I spent the next few days at Nora's apartment, doing small daily things, making coffee, folding laundry, walking to the store without looking over my shoulder, without someone shouting orders or handing me bills. It felt strange and precious. One morning, while sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, I saw an ad for a small rental downtown. Not fancy, an old brick building with creaky floors and drafty windows, but it could be mine. And, for once, I wanted it. By noon, I had signed the lease. I told only Nora. She smiled, handed me a chipped coffee mug, and said, "To new beginnings." To finally choosing myself, I added. The next weeks were a warm, golden blur. I bought secondhand furniture, one piece at a time. A faded couch, a wobbly kitchen table. I painted the walls light blue, the color of open skies. At night, I sat by the living room window, watching the town lights flicker like faraway stars. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I realized the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. One Saturday, while unpacking the last box, I found it at the bottom, the tiny plastic cake topper from that final birthday. I held it for a long time in the sunlight. It didn't hurt anymore. It wasn't a reminder of loss, it was proof of survival. I placed it on a shelf above my desk. A small private trophy, not for the people who hurt me, but for the girl who refused to let it destroy her. Sometime later, a card slid under my door. No name. Inside, a short note in neat handwriting. "You were never the problem. Some people just fear the ones they can't control." I never found out who sent it. I didn't need to. I already knew the truth. Family isn't something you earn by sacrifice. It's something given freely or not at all. And in their absence, I was building something they could never take. Peace, self-respect, and a life made not from duty, but from choice. That night, sitting by my window with the city lights glowing below, I smiled to myself and whispered words I had waited my whole life to believe. I am enough. Sometimes, Walking away from the people who raised you is the only way to become the person you were meant to. Blood might connect us, but respect, trust, and kindness make a real family. Have you ever had a moment where choosing yourself meant losing everything you thought you needed? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If you connected with this story, subscribe for more powerful journeys because here, every story matters. Stay strong. Stay true. Family drama doesn't define you. How you rise from it does.